Welcome to FitBody Lifestyle, the show where we dive deep into the world of fitness, health, business, relationships, and the art of living a balanced life. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Greg, and we're here to give you the benefit of our experiences in the fitness and bodybuilding industry, the corporate world, running a business, personal development, and building healthy relationships.
Whether you're sweating it out in the gym, hustling in your business, or seeking balance in your everyday life, you're in the right place.
So lace up those sneakers and grab that water bottle, and let's get ready to transform our minds, our bodies, and our lives.
Welcome back to another episode of FitBody Lifestyle. We're so happy to have you here with us. I'm here with my amazing husband here, Mr. Gregory DeBernard, aka Papa Bear. And we're so excited because the New Year's is only a couple of days away. And we wanted to have an episode where we talk about New Year's resolutions and goal setting, because we know this is something that's really important to people. And I feel like a lot of I don't know if we'd say mistakes made along the way, but there's a lot of those New Year's resolutions that are made with so much conviction, but that they kind of dwindle off. We kind of notice at the gym, there's lots of people in there for the first few weeks, maybe months, and then next thing you know, people start falling off. So we want to talk about, how can you make these goals more effective, right?
And if you are not a member of a gym, but then none of this will necessarily resonate with you. But if you are a member of a gym or have been a member of a gym, then you know that time period from January till maybe March, April timeframe, there's a surge in attendance at the gym. There's just the numbers go crazy, the equipment gets busier, the gym gets busier. If you've experienced this, you know exactly what we're talking about. If you have not, then just wait for it, because you'll see it. It's why a lot of people like their home gyms or will do other things during that period of time. And it's not a bad thing. It's just, people's enthusiasm for wanting to meet their New Year's resolution or that New Year's goal is fresh in their mind. So I think what one of the things that we want to talk about is how do you sustain that, but also recognize the reality of this is that a lot of people will set these New Year's resolutions and these goals. Hey, I'm going to go to the gym every week, or I'm going to, lose 50 pounds or 20 pounds or whatever it is, or I'm going to compete this year, whatever that New Year's resolution is. What we want to help you is how to achieve that.
Right.
Because there is a feeling, and the psychology around this is, and again, I'm not a psychologist, but I just will tell you from experience that you can tell people that are just defeated and go through that period of time when they've set that goal, which they thought was achievable, and they just didn't reach it. And there's a certain part of disappointment, and we'll talk about accountability to the most important person, which is to yourself. But this is not uncommon. I think we read a statistic at some point when we had our gym about like 85% of home exercise equipment is used as a clothes hanger, and like treadmills and ellipticals and things of that nature. They're used to hang clothes on because people will stop using them for various reasons. And so what we want to help you with is how to make those goals real for you and how to make them achievable and something that fulfills you.
Right. So, there's multiple pieces to it. One is setting goals. So we'll talk about, setting them first and foremost, because we want to make them realistic and like you said, achievable. I feel like sometimes when we set those goals so far out, it can be daunting, and it's easy to just go, forget about it. And then, from there, how do you put those stop gaps in place to help yourself continue on? And then what happens if you fall off? How do you get back on track? So, there's multiple pieces to this, but I think we start with setting them first.
Yeah. And there's something else I want to do as a crossover for this, because I do remember, as we're talking about this topic, is bringing back a lot of memories to this time in my corporate life, this time of year in my corporate life, where in that last quarter of the year, you're wrapping up the current year, and your boss is, or whether I was responding to my boss or I was the boss for other people, you're setting those goals for the coming year. And so, as we're talking about this is not just about fitness and lifestyle goals. This can apply to your corporate career as well. And a lot of what we're going to pull from today, or some of it that we're going to pull from today, really has that foundation in the corporate world. And we've both been executives in large corporations and done the corporate life, and so we're very familiar with goal setting. And quite frankly, it can be frustrating because it's like, how do I set a goal that is this what my boss wants me to do, or is this what I want to do? And there's a lot that goes into that. It was always a period of time for me, both setting my individual goals that was kind of angst producing, because I wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing, but I also wanted to make sure that my goals were achievable. And sometimes, I'd put my goals in front of my boss, and my boss would say, well, these are great, but you could do these in your sleep. That was a feedback that I got one time. And then the other time I got, well, these are great, but I don't know whether you can achieve them. So it's finding that right mix, and it's a process. And I think that's maybe the first stop on this, is that, look, setting your goals is one thing, but there's a part of the planning process, and I think I've given this quote before. President Eisenhower had this quote that plans are useless, but the planning process is invaluable. And as we talk about goal setting, the process of setting your goals should be something that is a process, is rigorous for you, involves some soul searching, some peeling back your own self and figuring out what you really want. And it's not set in stone. And I think that's the first piece that I want to get through, is that setting a goal is one thing, but sometimes setting that goal may lead you to other goals. And so being available, agile enough to then shift to another goal that manifests itself on the pathway to whatever goal you thought was going to be there, maybe is the first point that I want to make.
Yeah, and I think that having periodic reviews of your goals is a really good idea. And I like that you said that, because, what you decide your goal is today, that may shift as time goes on and as you learn and you grow, and that's okay too. It's not feeling too locked into something, and at the same time, you want to make sure you're making those decisions for the right reason, and, not being too easy on yourself and just giving up when it gets hard. So it's kind of like that balance between, why am I wanting to shift my goal?
Right.
Maybe I've discovered something, that was even better, or that I like more, or that's more interesting to me. Or maybe it's just getting tough and I need to, buckle down and make it happen. So, just that self-review, and, maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's monthly. It just kind of depends on, what that means for you. And, but I do think, setting an actual appointment with yourself to take the time to review the goals and go back and go over, the things that you set for yourself. And it doesn't have to be at New Year's. I actually, because for us, our busiest time of year tends to be, kind of May through October-ish. So I always like to, kind of as that starts to wrap up and the holidays start, that's a good time for me to start setting my goals and actually even start implementing them. So I have a head start on it by the time the first of the year rolls around, and hopefully I've got those habits in place that by the time, our work season gets very busy, that now I've already created and formed some habits. So even thinking about that in your life, when are those times that are busier? It's going to be harder to maybe implement something new. And when are the times where you've got a little bit more bandwidth that you can start to implement new habits and things like that. So I think that's a really great way to look at it too. And, not waiting till Monday or the first of the month or the first of the year. It's okay to on a regular basis, continue to set goals and go back in and either reaffirm or shift or do what you need to do.
And what didn't we see something recently? I think you showed me that, like, most goals start on a Monday or something.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to start right after the weekend. Right, like right after the weekend, I'm going to start my goal. And listen, that I'm not criticizing that. If you start your goal on Monday, great. But I am going to say that what Jamie said about kind of establishing a process for yourself of regular review. If you're doing this in the corporate world, if you're working in the corporate world and you're going through goal setting, man, that's a great opportunity to kind of put yourself on the same schedule of goal review for your personal goals as you are for your corporate goals. So if you have goals for within your job and there's a quarterly review, which is what we had, then establish that same schedule for your lifestyle goals, your fitness goals. To say, okay, every quarter I'm going to review these, and schedule that out, man. If you took a minute and just put 4 dates on your, and it's really 4 dates, right? 4 quarters in a year. If you just set that out at the start of the year and say, okay, I'm going to set my goals and here's the process I'm going to go through doing that. Which reminds me, I mean, we went through a process. We've talked about Rapport Leadership International several times, and we went through this life mastery course. Remember that?
Of course.
Of course you do.
Very well,
That's
yes.
a rhetorical question. But that was a very regimented process of 2.5 days, in fact, of us sitting down and setting 5-year goals. And what did you comment to me the other day? Well, you've commented to me about this several times, about what happened afterwards.
I don't remember.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, I set you up. That was a horrible question. But you've commented to me several times that when we were doing it, we did a mistake.
We overachieved.
We're gonna guard you against that today. We're gonna talk about that, about overextending yourself or being too grandiose in your goals. There's a value to that, which we'll talk about a little bit. But what we found is that even though we set these grandiose goals, when we drilled that, which was our first cut, and then we drilled that down, the goals that we actually established, it's amazing how much of those have actually come into reality.
Yeah.
Because of the process that we employed to make those goals real and embed them as part of who we are. It's the I will versus I can, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
Right,
too.
the power of setting the
Yep.
intention. And, one of the things I really loved about that process is that, it starts with looking at your life like a pie, a wheel, a pie chart, and, each piece, being, time with friends and family, it could be career goals, it could be fitness goals. It's like, it really kind of encompassed all the things that are important in, to financial goals, all of these things. And, that sitting down of going, okay, where has been the majority of my attention and what things am I maybe not paying enough attention to? And I liked that because I think it helped to shine a light on the areas that needed more goals. So, for me personally, like career wise, like I'm so dedicated and it takes up the majority of my time, energy, and mental. So for me, some of those goals might need to be on the personal side of, making sure I'm carving out enough personal time, or spending enough time with family, or making time for some of these other aspects. So I really like the idea of, kind of looking at the big picture of life and thinking about, what things might I be neglecting and what things may I be, putting a little bit more attention to, and how do I start to kind of balance that out so that way, when you are setting your goals, you're coming from a place of making sure that, you're not overlooking or neglecting something that's really important in your life.
You're looking at all aspects of it. You're looking at your life holistically, because you're more than your career. You're more than just your friends and family. You're more than just any one of your areas of life, but because you're all of those things. And so making sure that you're taking those things into account is important for making sure that you're fully engaged, that you are leading yourself to your next best expression of the very best version of yourself, which is making sure you're covering all those things. And let's not forget spiritual aspects of your life. Let's not forget mental aspects of your life, continuing education, thought, just taking time to think is a key piece of that. And man, I had a thought and it went into the thought tunnel and it just went and it left.
Because you're not taking time to think.
Because I'm not taking time to think. Exactly. I'm just leading that. Because I just thought of as we're leading into this, and kind of it's a lot of kind of lead into this, but this is such an important topic, about the importance of just making sure that your goals are achievable. But I know what I was going to tell you, or talk about. We've gotten several suggestions about talking about books that have made a difference. And so I don't want to do a full podcast on books because I think that's kind of like
Yeah, it's nice when they come up naturally in our conversation.
Yes. And so what I'm going, the challenge and part of my I will for New Year's, I'm going to start by setting a reasonable goal is that in each podcast, if there's a book that kind of talks about this particular topic or could help you on this particular topic, we'll introduce it. And these are just the books that we've personally reviewed or read, not reviewed, but read, and digested and applied some of those techniques. So on this particular topic, the book that I'm going to bring out is James Clear's Atomic Habits. And I'm going to start as we talk about goals, and this is kind of like a little bit of the opposite of this, but he has this saying, which is goals are for people who want to win once, habits are for people who want to win repeatedly. And so that ties in with what I said earlier about the Eisenhower quote about plans are useless, but the planning process is essential, which is as part of your goal, you've got to think about the habits that are going to lead you to that goal. Those habits, those routines, those practices that you embark upon on the daily are what's going to ultimately propel you to the goal that you set or the goal that really was out there that you need to pivot to. So as we talk about this, and it really kind of ties in with just this process piece and Jamie's recap of what we did at Life Mastery, which was there was a process, there was a rigor, there was a discipline to that. You think about all the things that you do during your day. For those of you in the fitness lifestyle, I am 100% certain that you have a routine for going to the gym. You have a routine for meal prep. You have a routine for macro tracking. You have routines for all this stuff. Do you have a routine for how you go about setting your goals? And if you don't, great time to set that in place right now. And we're going to hopefully give you some tools to do that, or at least talk about those things. But this is the part, set yourself up for success, create conditions for your own success by having a process and going through that to reach your goals. And that process will refine and modify over time because my process should not necessarily be your process. Your process should be whatever works well for you, but have a process.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you brought up the book and the habits because that was what I was really referring to, that with myself, like I'm already, as we started to kind of wind down some of our busiest times of years, thinking about what my goals were going to be for the new year and starting to create the habits while I had a little bit more time than I typically do. So I do think it is good to think about, and be realistic with, your time. I think time blocking is super important. And so when, even making that time to think about these goals, and setting an appointment with yourself, which of course you said before, like put that on your calendar, quarterly, I'm setting aside 2-3 hours once a quarter. It's really not that much time when you think about it, and if we don't, actually set that time away, it's very easy to let that pass. So, we do taxes quarterly, so it's really easy to, it's on the calendar, make sure we do taxes on this day. So, there's different ways that you can kind of trigger yourself to make sure that you're thinking about it. So you want to dive into?
Yeah, let's just start with kind of the basic, which is, and I think I've given this before, which is SMART objectives. I'm going to put this into objectives versus goals. And actually, now as I say that, let's back off. Let me back off. Let's talk about goals, and we'll talk about SMART goals and that acronym SMART goals, because you can apply this to objectives as well as goals. And the distinction between goals and objectives is simply this: goals is, at least this is the way I think of it, is goals are those things that you want to achieve that may not be completely in your control. For example, in our world, I want to get my pro card, or I want to win a pro show. These are goals that are good goals, and we see them all the time with people, but you're not completely in control of that goal. Whereas an objective is something that you are completely in control of. I am going to go to the gym 5 days a week. That's an objective that is completely within your control to achieve. I'm not saying there won't be diversions from that. Hey, you get up one day and there's an emergency, or you get called into work and you miss that time, or you're sick, right? That does not necessarily mean you're not accomplishing that particular objective. It means that other things got in the way for that day and you're adjusting and adapting and improvising, but which is what you should do, or what you can do. I hate that word should.
Yeah, don't shit on people. It gets just really messy.
Yeah, so it's what you can do. But so as we talk about SMART goals, it applies to SMART objectives at the same time. So the acronym SMART, the first one is specific. So the S in specific is make sure that that goal is something that is easily identifiable. Hey, I want to be happy. That is not a
Very
specific
vague.
goal. That is not
What does
a
that mean
specific goal.
even? Yeah.
Yeah. I want to have a better relationship with my friends. So that is not a specific goal. That's a nice want
Idea. It's a thought.
It's a
Idea.
thought, right?
Yeah.
But
and it's a good place to start drilling down
is.
from.
It
So
is.
if you come up with something and it's not specific, that's great. Now start drilling down.
Right. And on this one, I'll tell you a technique that I've used for years with people, which is to do your I want list. And the I want list is something that, as an individual, I find that I find that I'm just going to own my own noise here. I don't necessarily take the time to figure out what I really want. When I put that, and I've done this in the past, I just have not done it recently. So now as I'm saying this, I'm realizing, okay, I have a gap I need to fill. I've not taken the time recently to go through an I want list, which is, okay, I want a bigger house. I want a new bicycle. I want a better career. I want, all these, whatever it is that I want. I want to have more time for education. I want to have more time. I want to have a better relationship with my wife. I want to improve that. These are all I wants, but if I just put that, I want to have a better relationship with my wife, and then I don't dig deeper into that and say, well, what does that mean? First of all, why do I want that? And then what does that mean to me? How would I measure that? How would I determine whether I'm doing that or not doing that? Then I'm missing a big component. And I can tell people, hey, my love, I want to have a better relationship with you. And while she may like to hear that, and I know my wife pretty well, knowing that she would say, okay, well, how are you going to do that? What are the markers for that? And she wouldn't necessarily go all corporate on me and say, well, tell me how you're going to measure that. What are the deliverables? She might. It's possible. She might. But for me, if it's not specific enough, then I don't know whether I've actually accomplished it. It's like, if you're running a 100-yard dash, or if I have two people that say, I want to race, I want you to race each other, and one person's goal is, okay, that race means I'm going to run for 40 yards, but in the other person's mind, they say, well, I want to race for 100 yards. Well, those goals are not aligned, and so each of them are doing a goal which they have in their mind, but it's not specific enough for them both to understand it. So specificity is the first stop in making sure that you know that you've actually accomplish that goal at the end. In other words, the other way I would talk about specific is, how do you know you've reached success? What does success look like relative to that specific goal?
So in this example, you want to spend more time or have a closer relationship with your wife. Like what might that look more specifically?
Yeah, so that might mean my goal would be, I want to have a date night with my wife once a week. Okay. Or it might be, and as we get into the other parts of the SMART objectives, it might be, I want to, and my initial goal before I go through my process may be, I want to have a date night with my wife 3 times per week. That might be what I put as my initial specific goal. And I could even get more specific and say, I want to have a date night on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, whatever. I could be that specific. And as we go through the rest of SMART, we'll get into that. But that might be where I start, okay? But this is a loop. So this is a process. As you go through the SMART process, the S on specificity might be the first stop, but then as I get through the next stop, which is measurable, and then the third stop, which is achievable and reasonable, are these things that I can actually make happen.
Right. So you can keep refining it
That's
as you're
right.
going through the process. So the first shot at it is kind of that rough shot of what I want, and then, getting more specific with
Right.
it, like making sure that it's not too broad.
Right. And the way I always think of this is kind of reverse, is that think of the headline after this. If you're writing the headline on your newspaper, what would it say? Hey, I achieved my goal of making my wife happier. Well, okay, that's a great thing, but the headline that you really want is I met my goal of having a date night with my wife every week. Okay, so you just think about what success looks like at the end of this, and that will help you get specific enough because not only you should know what it means, but other people around you, if you're transmitting your goals, which is something I really encourage you to do, or anybody to do, because when you broadcast those goals to other people, it does create that added level of accountability. You're speaking that into existence.
Well, and in this case, I mean, like, if it's a date night 3 nights a week with your wife, it includes your wife, then your wife needs to be on board. So,
That's
like,
right.
you need to make sure that you're also including others that are involved in both so that they can support and hold you accountable, but also so that they're aligned.
Right.
Right.
And the 100%. And as we're talking about this, that brings in another element that's not part of the SMART object or SMART acronym, which is enlisting accountability partners and letting other people into your goals. Because when you do that, you create that what I'll call the fifth flank, and I'll explain that reference another time if you want, but it creates that support structure and that accountability structure around you. And by the way, how much more powerful is it if I just set this goal internally? If I want to have a date night with my wife twice a week or once a week.
Wait, we were at 3 times a week. How do we?
Were, because I've refined it through the SMART
No,
process.
we haven't gone through the process yet. We're still at 3 times a week.
Fair. Okay. So 3 times a week. But how different is that if I just keep that to myself and say, hey, honey, it's Tuesday night. What do you say we go for a date? Well, she might have something else going on. She might be busy. She might be, whatever. It could be a number of things. And so she can't do it. So now, because she didn't know my goal. But if I tell her my goal of, hey, I want to have 3 date nights with you a week, and she buys into that, well, then I've now set myself up for success to meet the rest of the SMART, or in this case, I guess it would be MART objectives. But I've set myself up for success, and I've enlisted an accountability partner. And in this particular goal, I've also created a connection between us where she's happy that I'm thinking about that as a goal.
Right. Yeah. I like that.
Okay.
So let's keep walking it through the process. So now we come to M, which is measurable. So
right.
we started out. Now our example is the goal is to be closer to your wife.
Right.
And you got specific, and that means 3 date nights a week. And now we're going to decide whether or not that's measurable.
And this was the question I always got 1,000 times whenever establishing goals, whether it was in the military or whether it was in the corporate world, and also here, which is how are you going to measure that? How are you going to measure that? And when in the bodybuilding world, because there's so much tied to aesthetics, it's very difficult to find measurables that dictate success or not success with the goal. But in this case, the measurable would be, okay, I'm going to measure that by blocking time out on my calendar. And then at the end of each week or at the end of each quarter or at the end of each month, whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to determine whether or not I met those 3 dates. And again, we're still at 3 dates because that was the initial goal.
Right.
When we get to this next one, we'll talk about whether 3 is reasonable, whether 3 is achievable or not.
Well, and remember, I mean, we're using this as an example. So,
Right.
I mean, if it's a fitness goal, then it could be that I'm going to work out 3 times this week, or it could be I'm going to meal prep once a week, or I mean, there's so many different things, that could be, the specific goals, and they could be, I know for a lot of people, they are fitness oriented, or maybe they're weight loss oriented. So the specificity might be, I want to lose 10 pounds, so, so we can kind of run some of those through as we're talking about it. So,
Right.
So I think our goal is measurable at this point.
It is measurable because it's really what I would call, using the military term, it's a go no go. Either I did it or I did not do it. Either I got that date in or I did not get that date in. So it's completely measurable, whether I track it on my calendar or track it on a piece of paper, on a training log or whatever. And some of you may laugh at tracking on a training log. That's silly. It's not. It's not silly because knowing whether you are achieving a goal and going back to look and say, hey, I did this goal, and here are the steps along the way that I tracked, so valuable for reinforcing a habit, so valuable for reinforcing the fulfillment that you'll feel when you do a goal. I mean, and at the end of the day, let's talk about that. That's the motivation, right? What's your why for this goal? Your why for this goal is because it's going to make you feel better. It's going to help you grow. It's going to fulfill you in some way. And if you're not doing that and you're not measuring it, then how do you know whether you've ever done it?
Right.
You know?
Well, and I mean, you can make it fun too.
That's right.
It could be, I mean, it sounds silly, but it could be like a star on the calendar
That's
or
right.
like, you know what I mean? You can make it kind of fun. Like for me, like I like that visual sort of like checklist. Okay, good. I got that. I did that, you know? So, I mean, finding ways to make it fun when you're measuring it, I think is great too. And, so
The gamification of this, which is kind of the corporate buzz speak for how do we make this fun. That's how I would just say it. But I mean, I can envision a calendar on the refrigerator or a calendar on the wall or a piece of, butchered paper that we stick to the wall, and we have the 30 days on there. And we say, boop, we did this day. Boop, we did this day. Boop, we did this day. And that just becomes that visual anchor as well to say, hey, we're progressing on our goal.
yep. I love that.
All right, so we talked about measurable, and now I think we're talking about achievable. So achievable is simply a reference point to, okay, I want to take my wife around the world in 80 days. And we're going to be gone for 80 days, and hey, we're going to connect. We're going to go on this marvelous adventure, and while that's a lovely goal, and it would actually, I could be specific of, hey, we're going to go to these 17 countries along the way, or these 17 stops along the way, and we're going to just travel around the world. That would be specific. It would be measurable. We either went on the trip or we didn't. But achievable is a different thing. Achievable is probably not there because of time, because of other commitments, because of money, because of the biggest thing would be time.
Right. Well, and I mean, and even just going back to, our example of date night 3 nights a week, is that realistic? And I think that's the question because, if we're setting an
Well, we haven't gotten to realistic yet.
sorry.
So this is achievable.
I jumped ahead.
This is achievable, and that's okay. But yeah, it's a great bridge into the next thing. But let's just spend a minute on achievable, and just figure out, like, as we talk about fitness goals. Okay, if you are brand new to your fitness journey, and you've never stepped off foot on stage, and your goal that you're setting your SMART objectives is, I want to get my pro card in 2025. That may be achievable, but it may not. And again, this gets into that question of, are you in control of that or not? And so when you're thinking about achievable, that may not meet that part of the SMART objectives.
Right.
And so, as we're using this example of what's with Jamie and I, achievable. If I said we're going to go on a date night 7 nights a week, okay, that might be achievable, but the likelihood is that 7 nights a week would be a lot of dates. That's 365 dates a year. How do you factor in holidays? How do you factor in time with other people? So again, it's a question of when you start peeling this back, you want to. The achievable thing is something that I think a lot of people will gloss over because they think, oh yeah, I can do that. I can do that. That's achievable. And this is where the potential letdown is that I'm not saying don't dream big. I'm not saying, and by the way, you can have multiple goals. There's nothing wrong with saying you can't have a primary goal, a stretch goal, and a stretch goal meaning that, man, this would be if everything lines up is going to be my goal. And then I'm going to do this other goal that's more, achievable and that I know that I can get to if I do the right things. Achievable is what's going to give you that fulfillment at the end. I want you to look at the A as that.
Yeah, I also think a good example would be in the weight loss realm because I do believe that is on a lot of people's board for the new year. And, if I say I want to lose 20 pounds in a week, that would not fall into the achievable category. So that's I think that's another good example of is this something that's even possible is really the question you're asking yourself.
Yes. And I think, when you say 20 pounds a week, is that achievable? Maybe. It might be achievable, but
I guess it depends on how many pounds you got to start with. But even
that's
that,
it.
I think I think 20 pounds in a week is going to be
It's probably not
overkill for,
achievable. Yeah. And the question is not whether you could do it. The question is whether it's and this is where it's a good bridge into the R, which is reasonable. The question is whether that's something that, even if achievable, what would you have to do to get there? And once you get there, is that really what you wanted? Because when you're setting a weight loss goal in particular, which I really encourage people not to do a weight loss goal, I just think if you would really more focus on objectives, we can differ on this because your smile is telling me you differ. I'm not a big fan of weight loss goals, only because I think that it's the habits around them that will get you to the goal that are more important than the actual amount of weight you lose.
I don't disagree with you. I just don't think you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Fair
And I
enough.
do think
Okay.
that, part of the measurable of it could be a weight loss goal. And it really kind of depends on the individual. And let's say, if somebody is overweight or obese and they want to, maybe the goal is to get healthy. And part of, that goal of getting healthy is losing, a certain amount of weight so that they could get into a healthier BMI range,
That's right.
kind of
Yep.
thing, then, that could be part of the measuring, piece of it. I do agree with you, though. You have to be careful, because if that becomes the only, way of measuring, I do like, okay, what does that mean? Like digging that deeper. That means I'm going to, clean up my diet in these specific ways. I'm going to make sure I'm getting X amount of activity in a day. And, depending on the person and what they've done in the past, that might be a simple step goal. If they're somebody who's fitness oriented person, it might be, upping it to the next level. So I agree with you. Like, I don't like weight loss as an isolation sort of
I do
goal.
like it as a measurable.
I do like, exactly. I do think that it, and again, even with that, just being careful, because we know when people get too, and we've had whole episodes on weighing yourself and how that can become toxic. So, for some people that might not be a good idea. I mean, for some people that know they already have a negative relationship with the scale, then that might be a conversation they have with themselves. I'm not going to do the scale. Maybe I'm going to do a measuring tape, or,
Right.
or I'm just going to go off of, it could be a lot of different things. And this is where, having that, internal conversation with yourself and working through that is important.
And what I would also talk about here is going back to the measures. And I love what you're doing with this, because you're kind of going back to points that we've made in the past and showing how they manifest as you're going through the process, which I love. Measures do not need to be single. So weight loss could be a measure of I want to.
My goal is to be healthier, or to.
It needs to be more specific than that.
Well, I know, but
Yeah.
that's what it's starting with.
Yeah.
And then we start breaking that down. It might be, I want to bring my A1C down.
Right.
I want to bring my cholesterol levels into line.
Those would be specific goals, well, by the way, I love those goals. And then you can figure out different ways of measuring them. So, hey, I'm going to reduce my sugar intake by X. I'm going to measure my A1C in quarterly labs. I'm going to, these would be the measurable events. Having multiple measures is really setting yourself up for success, because maybe you can't meet one, but if you have multiple measures, then you'll know whether you're actually on track. And again, this goes back to the habits versus goals part. The habit is ultimately what you want to build, because having that goal and then accomplishing that, and then, okay, what do I do now? But if you build those habits, then that goal becomes the next goal and the next goal and the next goal. So I really like that a lot. I also like this concept of KPIs, which are key performance indicators. So, which is another way of expressing your measures, or what are my key performance indicators that are pushing me towards that goal. Maybe it is A1C. Measured quarterly is a key performance indicator for improving my overall health. And I got a pre-diabetes diagnosis, and I want to make sure I don't get into type 2 diabetes. So one of the measures could be A1C. One of those measures could be sugar consumption. These would be my key not just my measurables, but my key performance indicators, monthly, quarterly, whatever you measure them. So I like that. I'm glad you brought that up.
Right. And I mean, and I know we want to so track, but I would add something in this particular instance is, while if we're taking something away, also think about adding something.
Right.
So,
I like that.
if we're going to be, as one of our goals, we're going to be decreasing sugar, we're going to only have a certain amount, let's say, well, what am I going to put in? I'm going to make sure I'm bringing in maybe, let's say, some more high fiber foods. So I'm going to bring in, certain number of fruits and veggies, daily or something like that. So just kind of wanted to put that out there too. And I like, kind of coming at it from every side.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's an alternative to SMART, which we'll talk about in a minute, but which is a simplified model and somewhat a little bit maybe more easily digestible. Not no pun intended with as we talk about food, but
we're hungry.
We'll talk about that in a second. So let's get to R, which is reasonable. So we talked about achievable. Okay, specific, measurable, achievable, reasonable. Reasonable is kind of the big one here in the sense of, okay, and this is where we get to the refining of the goal. So the example that we've been following through is I want to have 3 date nights with my wife a week. Okay, so is that achievable? Yes. Is it reasonable? Probably not.
No.
Okay.
It's not. And
it's not.
honestly,
Yeah.
it's not for us. I mean,
Yeah.
we typically travel almost every week. So there's going to be 2 travel days minimum.
And as your accountability partner, and for those that are listening to this episode, I'm going to say, yeah, but you could go on a date while you're traveling. Well, it's true. I'm not going to deny that.
True.
It's true. We could. But the question,
And we do sometimes.
Yes. And the question here is, as we talk about, and I thank you for bringing me back to this, because I want to go back to the goal of, hey, the goal is not just about the dates. The goal is to connect with my wife. So the expression of that goal is the date. But if I'm going on a date with Jamie and we are at a show, and we're going on Saturday night when we've just finished getting feedback at 11:30, 12 o'clock, and hey, babe, it's time for the date. What are we doing on that date? We're either tired, we're on the computer because we're setting up somebody's macros for their reverse or for the next day or whatever the case may be. We're on our phones. We're not connecting. And I know you can always say,
But even if you set the devices aside, are you distracted?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're not reaching. Again, this is why it's important when you're doing a goal. It's not just the goal itself, but why is that goal important to you?
Right.
What is the underlying thing that you want to get to? And the underlying thing is not the dates. That's the expression. But the real purpose of this goal is to connect with you. So
absolutely. So, so that I totally agree. And that's where being reasonable and, making sure that when we do those dates, we can do it with intent and we can do it, with focus, and that is that connection time. 3 times for us is a little bit aggressive of a goal.
it's not a little bit aggressive. It's definitely not reasonable.
It's not reasonable.
It is achievable, but it's not reasonable.
Correct.
And let's just flip the script on this and say, let's talk about fitness goals. I'm going to go to the gym 7 days a week. All right. If you're currently going to the gym 0 days a week and you go from 0 to 7, is it achievable? Yes. Is it measurable? Yes. Is it specific? Yes. Is it reasonable? Hell no.
Right.
Hell to the no.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and you might even do it for a week, 2 weeks,
3
maybe
weeks.
maybe even let's say a month. The chances of you being able to create that habit long term, and that's really, we're kind of coming back to that. Habits are the ultimate goal. We want something that we can implement over the long term. So making that goal not be as reasonable is going to diminish, because, you get burned out or you get overwhelmed and then I'm out.
Right.
So, okay, what is reasonable for you, the individual who hasn't been going to the gym? This is brand new for you. Like, what does that look like for you? I mean, I'll say even for myself, because, when I'm so busy, kind of the saying, the shoemaker kids never have shoes. And that's me. Like, I'm so focused on making sure everybody else is beautiful, fit, and everything else that sometimes I do neglect myself. And so that's been part of my early New Year's resolution. And I'm just starting with 2 to 3 days max.
Which is reasonable.
And then I'm focusing on a step goal just to
Right.
make sure I'm getting a little bit more movement in. So for me right now, that's reasonable. And down the line, as I continue to reevaluate these goals, which we of course encourage you to do and schedule for yourself, then I may increase that or add, or I may decrease or modify it, based on the time of year and what else is going on and what's reasonable.
Let me use that example because I really love that example. Let's say my goal was to get 3 days a week. And my specific goal was I'm going to go to the gym 3 days per week. Okay. That's my goal. And specific, yes. Measurable, yes. Achievable, yes. Reasonable, Maybe not. And the maybe not part of this is just recognizing whatever else I have going on in my life. And am I setting myself up for success? So do I want to finish a week and recognize, wow, I only got 2 days in this week. I failed. Well, you didn't fail. You just didn't meet the goal that week. You can make it up the next week. And it doesn't mean doing 4 days to make up for the day you missed. It means let's get to that 3 days a week. But this is where, as you go through this process of SMART, you want to always go back to each element and ask yourself those questions, kind of level set against that. So reality set, because you don't want to get into goal fatigue, and you don't want to get into goal disappointment, and you don't want to get into goal letdown because you haven't done those things. So maybe what I do is I want to do something physical for at least 15 minutes every day. Okay. Well, that's a lot more specific. It's very measurable. It's definitely achievable. And here's where we get to the reasonable thing. Yeah, I'd love to go to the gym, but if I'm on the road and, hey, I can't go to the gym, or out of my hotel where I can't go to the gym, or where there's no gym, or there's the getting to the gym would take too much time. Well, I'm going to bring my bands and I'm going to do a 15-minute workout in my room, or I'm going to do 15 minutes of guided yoga. I'm going to do 15 minutes of physical activity. I'm going to do calisthenics, push-ups,
sit-ups. Out walking the dog, or it could be, you play pickleball with the guys once a week. Like, I mean, it could be a lot of different things. And I like that. And I think giving yourself enough bandwidth that it becomes reasonable for you as an individual. For some people, 3 days a week to go into the gym may be perfectly reasonable.
Right.
It's just, you got to meet yourself where you're at, though. And that's what we're saying. So, for that person who's been consistently doing 3 days for an entire year, maybe it would be adding a fourth day, and that'd be totally reasonable for them.
Right.
But again, that's why it's so individual.
Right. And why this consistent rehash or going through that loop of the process is so important, because it helps you refine and improve the goal. Because again, the goal of the goal is not the goal. It's the habit that you form along the way.
Right.
Okay. Time bound. Time bound's pretty easy in the sense of, when am I going to do this goal? If it's a 2025 goal, what I would say is that putting yourself on an unlimited timer. This is my goal in life. That's great. And as I've encouraged you, I think, to have multiple goals. You don't just have to have one goal. You can have a 2025 goal. You can have a 5-year goal. When we went to Life Mastery, it was a 5-year plan that we were forming. So
a 5-year plan, though, that was also broken down
by year,
right. And then by month, right. And then by week, and then by day. It actually and I think that is important, that, you get too overreaching sometimes with the big long-term goals. I think a lot of times, okay, yes, you might have something us nurturing our relationship is always going to be an overriding goal for us. Like, that's a really important goal for us. Well, what does that look like, though, this year, this month, today? Like, what are we?
This minute, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and having those daily check-ins are so important to measure how you're progressing against that goal. So time bound is simply what's the time that you're going to put on this, okay? And again, as you think about time, go back through specific, measurable, achievable, and reasonable to figure out whether that timeline is sufficient. So if it's a weight loss goal, and Jamie already gave I'm going to lose 20 pounds in a week. Okay, is that, even if that's achievable, even if that's reasonable, which is not, but in the time bound, no. In a week, that's not. But if I said I'm going to lose 20 pounds over the course of this year, that's something that is achievable. That's something that is reasonable. And what I would tell you is that that's a good goal. If you don't have the habits supporting that goal, then, and again, that may be the measures, the M in the SMART goal setting, that's really going to set yourself up for success.
Right. Well, and as you're saying that too, when you think of a weight loss goal, and I do think this is a good one just to kind of hammer home, just because I know that is on a lot of people's list, is that it's one thing to lose the weight, it's another thing to keep it off. So, that's the other thing to think about. If my ultimate goal is to have a more healthy body composition, so I want to have more muscle, I want to have a less body fat, maybe I'm measuring that at some point through, how much I weigh. I need to also take into account, okay, if I am doing resistance training and putting on muscle, that's going to offset something. So that's something to think about. But it's like, at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is really to be healthier. Mm-hmm. So, if losing 20 pounds in the week is not going to make me healthier, that's there's other issues that are involved in that. So what is a healthy amount of weight to lose? And some of that's going to depend on how much you need to lose to start with, but for most people, it's like half pound to a pound. I mean, if somebody is morbidly obese, then that's going to be a little different. The average kind of person who's got, 10 to 20 pounds to lose, a healthy amount of weight loss is, probably going to be closer to a half pound to maybe a pound and a half max. So then, ultimately, like when you're setting these goals and the measurement and the time, all these things that we're talking about, you need to think about, the outcome that you're really looking for. Is it sustainable? Is it going to be something that's going to be healthy to begin with? Because something might be achievable, like we've talked about, but by achieving it, is it going to actually help the ultimate goal, which is to be, say, if my ultimate goal is to be healthier, and part of being healthier is to lose weight, if I lose it too quickly, that's not going to be healthy. So now I'm not actually, so it is absolutely like that circle and that process of going through and evaluating, each of these pieces for, and making sure that it's aligned, with really what you want for yourself in your life, and is this a habit that I can carry through? Because, something people don't realize sometimes, they think, oh, I'm going to do this diet. I'm going to get where I need to get, and then everything's going to be great. No, then you're going to need to sustain it.
Yes, right. Now that I've built these habits, I need to sustain these habits. And so in the corporate world, I'll tell you, there's so much emphasis placed on outcomes. I mean, I know you go through the goal setting exercise at the beginning of the year, but my experience was the goals were less important than the outcomes that you delivered or your deliverables. And so it always kind of was this inconsistency, this duality, if you will, or inconsistency between, okay, we want you to set goals, but at the end of the day, we're going to measure you against your outcomes, your deliverables. How well were those? I'm going to tell you that's not necessarily consistent with the growth mindset. The growth mindset is really more about improving and growing and learning from these things. And so what I'm going to tell you is more important than the outcome is the habits that you form along the way, and whether those habits are sustainable and whether they're healthy habits and things that help produce the ultimate outcome. That to me is more important. And when you're setting goals, that's what I would really be focused on. So I'm going to modify SMART by calling it G SMART. And G is not for Greg, although I'd love to say that, but G SMART is what's the goal? Goal is that, I want to be healthy, and I'm going to let you go with that, okay? Because I know, and that's why I'm adding the G is in the front of it is, what do you want? I want to be healthy, okay? Then we get to the specificity of that goal. What is the specificity of that goal, which is the S? And so I'm just kind of modifying the acronym a little bit for G SMART to just give you a little bit more latitude and encourage you not to just do one, but to do several that really describe your wants and what you want to achieve this year. But and we've gone through this, so I think you got the emphasis. There's really focus on what's achievable and reasonable. Those may be the two most important pillars in that process of going through it. So.
Yeah. And the why exercise that we've talked about before is really great. So, if you do start, I want to lose weight. Why? I want to feel good.
Why?
I want to be healthier. Why? I want to look better. Like, I mean, what I mean? Like, it's so like kind of digging, like, what is at the root of this? And I think that does really help when you get clarity on why you're saying you want what you want. Then the rest of it, I think, becomes a little bit easier, because
that's really powerful.
Yeah. Sometimes if we're not really clear on why we want something, we could kind of go off in the wrong direction and then go, how did I end up over here? One of the things I know, we've talked a lot about, and something they talk about in rapport, is if I'm not clear on what I want and why I want it, and if I don't make those decisions for myself, they'll get made for me.
That's right.
And I'm going to wake up one day and go, how did I get here? This isn't what I wanted. Well, because I never got clear on what I did want.
Why you wanted it.
Exactly. If I'm very ambiguous on those things, then life is going to happen to me instead of me choosing my path in life, and I do think when we start talking about, these resolutions and these goals and these things like that, this is your time to really get clear on, what's important to you. Like, what do you want? What do you want your life to look like? What do you want to experience, and getting a good, clear picture. I mean, you could even do a vision board or something, or, have fun with it, and kind of create that, and then start digging into the goals, because, a goal without a purpose is kind of
a wish.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you talked about that so importantly, because the why, listen, from a leadership perspective is we both been, I said this, we've both been leaders in various aspects of our lives. The amount of engagement that goes up with your teams when you get them connected to the why, and this isn't just me making this up, there's science on this that talks about a level of engagement going up when people understand the why. I can tell you from the military perspective, one of the most important pieces of a mission is your why. Why are we doing this? And the reason why that's so important is because if everybody else is gone, you're starting a mission with 20 guys and 19 are gone. That one guy is still expected to deliver on that mission. If he doesn't know, or she doesn't know, he or she does not know why that mission is important, how are they possibly going to fulfill that mission?
Right.
You've got to understand the why in order to drive that why, that purpose will ultimately drive your behavior. So
Right.
I do think that's why I'm going to tell you, starting out with the I want list and then the why that's important to you is so kind of fundamental to really setting goals.
And powerful.
Yes.
I mean, we talk about this a lot when we're coaching athletes. I have athletes sometimes come to me, maybe they come from a coach and they're like, my coach never explained this to me, so I didn't really do it. Or I kind of only halfway did it,
Right.
Because it didn't really make sense to me. And, I'll tell them, listen, if you don't understand the why behind what we're doing, please tell me. Let me explain it to you. Like, I don't mind taking that time to educate you, because I know that once it clicks and we're on the same page as to why we're doing what we're doing and what it's going to help us accomplish, you're going to do it with that passion and that gusto that you would never have done it for if it feels arbitrary or unimportant to you. So it's the same way with your goals. I mean, if you're not clear on why you're doing it and there's no passion or purpose behind it, how are you possibly going to sustain it and start to build the habits that are ultimately going to feed into that? And even if you aren't clear on that, and then you do implement some sort, if they aren't feeding into what you really want, then you might find yourself way off on the wrong track anyway,
right.
which is even worse, than not going, than staying stuck. Now you're backwards. So, so I think this is. I mean, it's been helpful for me, even. I'm like, I feel like I already have some clarity on some of the things I want to set forth.
Well, the challenges I'm going to put out now are the first, and just going back to the why, I always had a standing rule in all of my commands in the corporate world, which is if you don't understand why, and I can't tell you the why, if you don't understand the why, we're missing a big piece. But if you ask me why we're doing something and I can't tell you the reason for it, then we either don't need to be doing it, or I need to go back to the reason why I wanted to do it in the first place, or why we have that process. So the first challenge is this: if you're an athlete and you're doing something and you don't know why you're doing it, ask your coach. That's challenge number one. Challenge number two is to prepare your I want list. Challenge number three is to go through and establish your G-SMART goals, which is your goal, which is your I want and the why you want it, and then do one or two, or five or six. Do whatever you think you need to do to set yourself up. Because if you do this process for 5 goals and you then go back to the achievable and reasonable aspect, and you say, well, this one, I want to focus on these 2. You can have a primary goal. You can have a stretch goal. Hey, my primary goal is to do this, but my stretch goal is to do this other thing that's bigger. That's absolutely encouraged to do that.
Yeah. And I'm going to give 2 other challenges.
Oh, good. Ooh, wow. We have a lot of challenges.
One is going to be, once you come up with your goals, you're going to share this with the people that are going to help to hold you accountable. And then the other one I would say is, I would put it up somewhere where it's visible. Maybe it's a sticky note on your mirror, or you put your goals up for the year, and
visible.
Up visible on your what's the word? Refrigerator.
On your refrigerator, on your mirror, somewhere where you're going to see it every day.
Yeah, every day that you're going to see it, just to reinforce and remind yourself. I mean, you're already going to have those measurable things in place. I still feel like, just kind of having those overriding goals. I mean, for us, like with the business, having our mission, and we, want to refer back to that mission, it's kind of the same kind of thing. And just bringing you back to, the process that you went to and reminding yourself on a daily basis, and then having those, friends, family, people that you confide in that, that are going to also help hold you accountable is going to be really helpful too. And, maybe, you even share something with someone, hey, we're going to check in with each other once a month and see where each of us are on our goals, and you maybe set aside that time so that accountability partner, again, this helps that measuring of, okay, we checked in this month. All right. I set aside 3 days a week that I was going to be in the gym. I'm finding that's maybe a little bit more than I thought it, was going to be,
Refine the goal.
right. So,
Or
I think
your goal. Yeah.
whether that's a conversation with yourself or with, somebody that you trust, I think that's another way to make sure you're successful.
Yeah, I was going to say, and by the way, I'm going to build on the thing of writing it down. The visual aspect to it is so important, and I would include not just the what, but the why you're doing it. The why can sometimes really help you achieve that goal. I want you to also embrace this, that this is not binary, meaning this is not a win or lose thing. This is a success or opportunity. And success means that you accomplish the goal. Opportunity means that you got some more work to do. But if like we talked about the 3 days a week in the gym, okay, if the first 3 weeks you're only in the gym two days a week, that's an opportunity for you at the end of that month to revisit that goal and say, okay, 3 is not achievable for me, but 2 is. So 2 is going to be my goal. And I want you to think about this as though let's now that's in February. You refine your 3 days a week to 2 days a week. So you refine the goal to 2 days a week, and you go through the rest, and you go through February, March, April, May, and hey, you did 2 days a week. How good are you going to feel? Well, then in June, man, I know I can do that 3. Man, I'm going to do that 3. So now you go back to the 3 and you achieve that 3. Or if you don't, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you still keep pushing towards that goal and the habits that you're forming along the way. And 2 is better than none. If you're going from, 0 to 3 and, well, okay, we didn't quite get to 3, but I got to 2.
Awesome.
Man, that's awesome. Man, if you got to 1 is still 100% more than you're doing now if you're doing 0. Okay. So think about all things relative and just take yourself out of that binary win-loss, that fixed mindset of win or lose, go or no go, and get into this growth mindset of how can you be better? So how does 1 become 2? How does 2 become 3? That's that little better. And the thought I had, first of all, a couple things. One, I told you we were going to give you a little simplified model for SMART. We're going to do that in a fusion hack. So that maybe is a teaser for our next fusion hack.
On Thursday.
The second piece is that you guys know we always end this show with a like, comment, subscribe, leave your comments and reviews. In the comments, I would love for you, when you're watching this episode, to share your goals there. That is a public way of sharing your goals. And if we get enough of them, we'll share them. We'll share some of those or all of them, depending on what we get. So, and if you do not want attribution, meaning you do not want to know that Jay or Jane made this goal, then just tell us that you don't want that name, and we won't put it out. But I would love to be able to include the name and get that reinforcement. What do you think about that?
I love it.
Okay.
All right.
Then I did the like, comment, subscribe, and leave your review. So then we can leave with the 3 Bs.
Be good to yourself.
Be good to each other.
And be safe.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to FitBody Lifestyle. We hope today's episode has left you feeling motivated and equipped to tackle your fitness goals, business challenges, and the daily dance of life. Remember to value progress over perfection. Life's tough enough alone. Find the chosen family around you to help you along the way.
If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite streaming platform. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at FitBody Fusion.